Hello and welcome to Intentional Leadership, the podcast show that will help you break the barriers holding you back from the true life of significance you are meant to live. I'm your host, Janelle Bruland, and I invite you to join us as I share leadership lessons and specific strategies to transform your leadership, crush your goals, and love your life. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? This is Janelle Bruland. Welcome to the Intentional Leadership Podcast. Do you find yourself overwhelmed with all of your projects and responsibilities? Do you have a crazy number of commitments on your plate that you feel that sometimes you don't have time to breathe? Today, we are going to talk about the power of the word no. One of the most powerful tools a leader has is choosing when to say no. I can relate to being in a place where I was overwhelmed with the number of tasks and responsibilities that I had. It was very difficult to keep up, and I was feeling disappointed and frustrated. There is good news. We don't have to live like this. I learned to develop a very powerful tool, choosing when to say no, and we're going to discuss how using this can help you get in control of your life. Let me share with you how I came to learn this lesson for myself. It was a typical work day, and I was at my desk working on a project for a couple of hours before heading into meetings for the afternoon. My phone rang, and on the other end was a friend of mine inviting me to lunch. I hadn't heard from this friend in some time and was delighted to hear her voice. She and I had one of those long-time special friendships where you could be separated for months, and when you got back together, felt you didn't miss a beat. "Just a minute," I said to her. "Let me pull up my calendar and see when we can get together." Well, the minutes stretched on as I pored over my calendar, and I wasn't able to find any open space in the next week, or the next week, or the next. I was so overscheduled, so jam-packed with back-to-back events during and after work, that I couldn't find time to fit her in for 2 months. This seemingly small yet telling moment was a wake-up call for me. Here, a dear friend who called it random looking to connect was going to have to be put on the back burner for 2 months so I could fulfill all of my other obligations. The realization of how absurd this situation was hit me hard. Because I'd committed myself to so many things, I didn't have time to do something that was important to me. Can you relate? I obviously needed to do a better job of choosing when to say no. Isn't it funny that one of the most important words to say is also one of the hardest? One simple word, no. Yet to say it brings up a flood of feelings, guilt, defensiveness, a fear of offending. Sometimes these feelings flash by so quickly we don't even notice what they are. We just know that we don't want to say that one little word. Yet the ability to say no, to set boundaries and build a structure that works for us, is one of the most important tools we can add to our arsenals to successfully create our best lives. Today I want to share with you 2 strategies to be more productive and have space in your life for the things that matter. I'm going to help you make no one of the most important words in your vocabulary. The first is, we want to recognize what is holding you hostage. Second, learn how to say no. So the first, what's holding you hostage? Well, one thing is the communication tidal wave that we live in this always-on world. There's no doubt about it, it's becoming increasingly difficult to separate ourselves from the onslaught of incoming communication and ceaseless activity that seems to come along hand in hand with success. Demands on our time stack up. People who need us invite us to their meetings and they ask our opinions, and we feel good about being able to help. But then there comes an inevitable breaking point, and suddenly we find ourselves overworked, overcommitted, and overwhelmed. If we were already headed that way, technology has added jet fuel to that journey. This barrage can derail the best laid plans and even keep us from making them in the first place. Did you know that today the average knowledge worker is interrupted every 10 to 12 minutes by some form of communication? And during those 10 to 12 minutes, we tend to interrupt ourselves at least twice to check email, phones, etc. This kind of schedule is the enemy of deep thought, the kind of strategic thinking that we need as leaders to lead both in our businesses and our personal lives. In fact, in many ways, there's now no separation between work time and everything else. All of this is affecting all aspects of our lives and how we run our businesses. We can add to this communication tidal wave the curse of capability. If you're perceived to be a capable person, you probably get lots of calls asking you to donate your time to important causes. You'll be asked to sit on boards, attend meetings, and people will seek your wisdom and input. These are all good things when you have the time, energy, and interest in the mission you were asked to be involved in. Another thing that's holding us hostage is we love saying yes. I'll be the first to admit that I'm a leader who has struggled with creating boundaries for myself. After all, who doesn't love saying yes? Who doesn't enjoy the look of gratitude or relief on the face of a person who has asked the favor? Besides, saying yes can at times be a matter of pride. With the high bar I set for myself, and you may relate to this, I think I can do it all. And so, of course, at one time in my life, I always said yes. In my own business, as my business grew and gained traction, and I was out networking and involved in the community, my face and my brand became well established. And the more frequently I got involved in community activities and nonprofits, the more I was recognized. Besides, those activities were fun for me, and I wanted to be involved in them. I found them very rewarding. It wasn't just about me always wanting to say yes, but as a result of my frequent participation, I was asked more and more to be involved in this event, serve on this board, attend that luncheon. I loved to help, to bring value, to say yes. And there's so many good things out there to be a part of. Along with the myriad of outside opportunities to serve and help, I was also helping regularly in my kids' school. And I was serving on 2 community boards and on my industry international board. I was doing all of this while growing my service business. I really thought for a while that I could do it all, and I did for a while before realizing it wasn't sustainable. Not being able to schedule lunch with that friend was that small moment, that significant moment that pushed me over the edge and made me realize that I needed to learn the power of no. Simply put, I couldn't do it all. And I actually didn't have to do it all. All of you listening today are high achievers. You're likely driven, and we want to accomplish things, and because of that, it's so easy to get caught up in doing more and more. However, listen up. If we aren't careful, we're going to miss out on those very things that matter most to us. I said yes so much. I wanted to. It felt great. It made people happy. It made me happy for a while. That is until I realized I had loaded up my plate so high that it was in danger of toppling over and taking me down with it. I learned that saying yes to everything was not the path to true success. In fact, if I wasn't careful, it would become my undoing. Instead, I needed to understand when and how to say no. And you can too. So now that you've recognized the things that may be holding you hostage, let's talk about our second point. You can learn to say no. Let's face it, there's only so much time in the day. You and I have 24 hours. We all have the same 24 hours, and it's up to us to be intentional how we're going to use them. Part of this intentionality came from me when I realized that everything we say yes to means saying no to something else. Think about that. It's so important, I need to say it again. Everything we say yes to means saying no to something else. What a tragedy it would be to get so caught up in saying yes to everything that comes along that without knowing it, you take away precious time from your most important priorities. Yet this happens so easily that oftentimes we don't even notice. It's subtle. Great leaders that we admire have, for the most part, figured this out. Saying no doesn't mean you don't care. Saying no doesn't mean you are not capable and able to help. It simply means you can't help right now and still do all the things that you've already committed to. I like this quote from Warren Buffett. The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. When we think of the most successful leaders in the world, we are usually thinking about all the remarkable things they do. What we don't think about is all the things they don't do in order to accomplish their extraordinary results. With the amount of demand you have as a leader every day, you need to value the time you have and master the art of defining your top goals and setting boundaries around them. What are the top goals that you are working on? How many do you have? I suggest you take time to write a list of all of them. Even take a moment to stop this podcast so that you can write these down. Do they come easily to mind? Do you have 5, 10, 20, 25 top goals? If you have too many priorities, you really have no priorities. I suggest you narrow these down to your top 3 to 5 and focus only on these. Give them all your attention and energy. Let the rest go. Learn how to say no by asking yourself the following question. What do you need to say no to? In order to create a manageable schedule, there are simply some things that just have to go off your list. As I mentioned, my own schedule got so jam-packed because I just kept adding and adding to it. Most of us live this way. We're always busy, but not really paying attention or being disciplined about what we spend our time on. We have continually growing to-do lists until we get to that place of overwhelm. I've adopted this discipline in my own life to eliminate unnecessary tasks and focus on my most important priorities. It may help you if I give you the top 5 items that I have learned to say no to. Some of these you're welcome to put on your own list, and you may have others that you think of. Number 1, I've learned to say no to the opportunities that come up that I'm not completely passionate about. The opportunities that come up that I'm not completely passionate about. When we choose to participate in something, we should be excited to be involved, not doing it out of guilt or obligation. 2, the things that are not aligned with my core values and priorities. To stay true to our values, our words, behavior, and actions, our to-do lists, must be in line with our beliefs. The third item I learned to say no to is to those requests that are not in my wheelhouse. To those requests that are not in my wheelhouse. Often we're asked to do things that truly belong on somebody else's to-do list. Do you have any of those? Be sure to pass on them or delegate them to a more appropriate person. Number 4, to the things that drain me of energy. To the things that drain me of energy. Our time should be spent on activities that we enjoy and give us energy, not deplete it. And number 5, to relationships that are unhealthy. To relationships that are unhealthy. We will never be our best if we're constantly having to lift ourselves up from interactions with unsupportive or negative people. This may sound harsh, but eliminate these relationships. It's not on my list of 5, but I've also learned to say no to living a reactive life. I've learned that I don't have to answer every phone call or text in real time, especially if I'm involved in something else that requires my undivided attention. These days, I don't wake up in the morning and turn on my electronics first thing. I avoid that communication tidal wave. Instead, I schedule a time to start reading and responding to emails and phone messages, and as much as I'm able to, I stick with that. So if you're like me and you've found that you have a hard time saying no, listen up. To have the successful life you desire, you must be disciplined to say no more than you say yes. Prioritize. Figure out what really matters. Then build your life and schedule around those things and those things only. Let's review what we have covered today in the power of the word no. We've talked about 2 strategies to be more productive and have space in your life for the things that matter. Number 1, recognize what is holding you hostage. Is it that communication tidal wave? Is it your love for saying yes? And number 2, learn how to say no. What needs to come off your list and your calendar? I've included in this podcast a handout called Just Say No. You can download this for free at janellebruland.com. Use this handout for your own personal reflection, or it's great to use as an exercise with your team. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. If you have any questions, please email me at janelle@legacy-leader.com. If this podcast has been helpful, please review and share it with others. For more episodes of the Intentional Leadership Podcast, go to janellebruland.com/podcast. Remember, when you grow as a leader, your team will grow and your company will grow. You can transform your leadership, crush your goals, and love your life.